Want even more CEDH content? Commander's Herald has got you covered. It's the best resource for CEDH articles out there, written by experts, including Playing with Power's own Drake Sasser. Check out the latest Phyrexia All Will Be One set reviews now. Go to commandersherald.com today to read more.
Hello and welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things CEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, aka Ashani, aka Jamaican Dude, and today we have a fantastic, superb, awesome, absolutely stunning humans with me today. Guest and also co-host, Drake Sasser. How are you, sir?
I am excellent. It's a pleasure to be here. Been an awesome weekend, 3-day weekend for me, and I appreciate all the flattery leading into the introduction. That was really nice.
I try, and also another stunning human, Greg, CuriousControl himself. Hello.
Hey guys, what's up?
All right. Before we get started, I wanted to talk quickly about our sponsors. TC Rockets has one of the largest selection of toys, comics, games in San Diego, with thousands of MTG cards being added to their online store every morning. Never know what deals you'll find at tcrockets.com. You can also keep up with their games by tuning in to their Twitch stream every Tuesday and Friday for live paper magic. Fuel up and check out TC Rockets today. All right, today's topic, I believe, will be a spicy one. We are here to talk about control/tempo versus going bear. Going bear is like as fast as Endnos decks, combo decks you can think of. Anything from Raktos to whatever color pairing you want to. The whole idea is presenting a win as early as turn 1 to turn 3. Whatever the strategy comes to mind. So, let us start with our guest, Greg. What can you explain to our listeners what you believe is what control is in CEDH?
What control in CEDH is basically just trying to prevent those Burr turbo wins on 1, 2, and 3 and hit critical mass and approach the late game and then just overwhelm opponents with card advantage and just better cards tuned for the late game in general. So control decks don't run a lot of rituals. They don't run a lot of the loosey-goosey fast mana that, the Naz decks are running, because they're just trying to have more effective pieces of interaction. They're trying to have more effective overall card draw and just built to get to the late game while also interacting with those early win attempts.
All right. So also, would you say that stacks and control share the same space, or is there a difference?
So it depends on what kind of stacks deck, but
Correct.
stacks tends to play really proactively. So something like a Winota, right? You're not mulliganing for stacks, you're just mulliganing for Winota plus things to trigger with, compared to more traditional stacks like a Heliod list or something where you're specifically mulliganing to stop your opponents. Those decks play more similarly to mid-range control, or I guess to more reactive style decks. But there's a very clear difference between Winota stacks and every other kind of stacks.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like, to me, I would call Winota aggro, but I agree with you. There is some slowing the down game plan going on. Drake, would you like to explain what you believe is a go burr stretch combo fast combo strategy CDH?
So, yeah, when you were talking about any kind of combo deck, I mean, in general, and this is any format, it doesn't have to be specifically CEDH, you're typically trying to execute, as you said, a combo. It's going to be usually a card plus another card. Usually there's a differentiation. We call them A plus B combo decks. Those are, you need a specific piece plus another specific piece, and that usually leads to directly winning the game or getting incredibly ahead. And you have critical mass combo decks. These are things like Storm where you just need a bunch of different rituals and then a storm payoff piece, and your combo is just baked into your deck by virtue of having a bunch of different cards that you need a bunch of, but once you do, they all work together and lead to a victory. This is no different in CEDH, and that's why Ad Nauseam is so powerful in the format. Is it functions oftentimes as a one card combo because it immediately gives you such a critical mass of those cards that you can do the storm thing or whatever your deck does to execute a combo that wins the game immediately after resolving the card.
Alrighty, awesome. So, do you believe that control is a viable strategy in tournament EDH Magic, or tournament like control versus like we're gonna say mid range. Like I can't figure it another way versus like playing like what we want to call good cards versus a quicker strategy. Because I believe there's a card pool that I believe we select from, as Greg was saying, with you playing stacks, so you don't play the fast mana, the rituals would make that strategy versus control bad versus you play all of this in the going fast meta. And I believe you both have played in tournaments, maybe not a lot, but you've seen what the open meta is like. So would you try to tell someone, hey, I believe going fast is the way to go?
So I think there's a lot of components to the question you just asked, and I mean that's why we're doing an entire podcast about it. But to kind of start my perspective around what you asked me, I think you kind of have to start at where I stand on CEDH in general.
Okay.
I made the statement in one of the miscast episodes that the 4 playable decks I find are Blue Farm, Winota, Rog Silas, and Najeela, right? And each of these decks are the best in class at something. When somebody says play the good cards, typically that translates to play the best in class cards. If you're trying to do a control thing, play the best control cards. If you're trying to do a combo thing, you need to play all the efficient combo cards. Different cards fit different roles. Surprise, that's not news to anybody. However, there's still going to be best in class. There's going to be a combo deck that is better than all the other combo decks. There's going to be a control deck, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the 4 decks I've selected that I think are the best in class at what they do. And I'm glad that Greg, during his introduction, brought up Winota, because I think that's a deck that does illustrate a lot of principles of a control deck, right? Stacks and control, in my opinion, do share a very similar space. It's like how combo, A plus B combo, and critical mass combo share a space, right? You're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to drag the game on, invalidate a bunch of your opponent's cards in some way or another, and eventually lead to a victory by slowing the game down and beating people with less efficient but more powerful cards. Stacks decks do that. Draw gold control decks do that as well. And so CEDH is so complex because you need to kill the whole table that most archetypes are a combination of archetypes. You don't really see pure stacks, pure control. You do see sometimes, but in general, the average pod consists of combo control, aggro control, or whatever. Usually combo plus something, but you're usually doing one or the other. Right. And I think Winota is a good example of a deck that can take a control role that is also an aggro deck. Like Greg said, sometimes you mulligan for a fast Winota, but I don't even think that's true in all the pods. I think in some pods you do mulligan for stacks pieces and then take a control role, play the game a little bit slower, and then play Winota late in the game once a bunch of the efficient pieces opponents are playing have been invalidated. So I do think you can take a control role in CEDH. The question I think that you're more looking to hone in on is what does that control deck look like? And I think that's where Greg and I have a lot of different opinions.
All right. So, Greg, let's hear your side of the story. What is your tier list? Since we clearly saying tier list, what do you believe are the playable...
like the playable tournament decks?
I wouldn't even say tournament. Those playable decks in general.
Just playable decks in meta.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to say, I mean, Winota, Blue Farm, and Najeela, I think, are some of the best decks in the format, and it's really hard to say like a control deck should be like, you know, in like the top 4, top 5 lists that people should be playing, because it's just not flashy. But I do think CuriousControl is in a really good spot in the current meta, and there is obviously some bias there, but I think it is a fairly powerful deck when played and piloted correctly.
Okay. Let's see. So if let us not say the best deck in the meta itself, what would you state as the best if you enjoy this archetype, what would be the top four decks or top four decks you would wish to play?
Top four specifically control decks?
Correct.
All right, so the top four specifically control decks I think people should be playing are Curious Control, a Thrasios Bruce Tarl. I'm not going to call it Dawnwaker or Evolution because I think they're not quite to pure control. And then it's Tasigur, and then oh god, the vehicle commander that just came out, the Azorius one.
Shurikai?
Shurikai. Yeah, Shurikai is another fairly good control stacks combo list. That's fairly adaptive.
You believe
I think those are like the top control decks right now.
Why Tasigur?
So Tasigur gets to attack the format in a really unique way. You get to cheat out the big baddies. Like, you get to put a Nezahal into play really efficiently by using... I mean, Tasigur will frequently only cost you like 2 mana, right? And then you get to Neoform or Eldritch Evolution Tasigur into any just ridiculous creature in your deck. And a lot of decks aren't prepared to deal with that threat because they're just looking to either win the game or hit, their critical mass super early. But Tasigur spends 2 cards, 1 card in the command zone, 1 card from its hand to just get there. It hits critical mass super efficiently. And then it's able to do that again and again and again.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree with your top four, but I'm here with you. I didn't think Tim Nastasia should be in there, but I agree.
What do you think of Shurikai? That's a deck of yours.
That's a Shurikai. I prefer Urza over Shurikai, actually.
Really? You think Urza is a control deck?
I think so. I honestly think Urza might be the best prison deck. As close as prison you can get.
Prison and control are different things, because prison plays more like stacks, but control still has the ability to go kind of fast, and it wants to be flexible. Oh. And I think more colors are what makes for a better control deck, and what makes for a better CEDH deck in general, because you want to be running the best of the best cards available.
I agree. I mean, opinions.
Yeah, I actually am willing to start disagreeing at that point. I don't think the average control deck is ever designed to go fast. I think if your deck is trying to play both sides, like what you just described, that's literally describing a mid-range deck. A mid-range deck is designed to be able to go fast in the matchups you need to, but also go over the top of the average, efficient combo, go burr, aggro, whatever you want to call it. Whatever is playing all the efficient cards, you're designed to be able to go over the top of that. But you are, on average, going to get beat by dedicated control decks if you're doing something in the mid-range space.
Yeah. So, I mean, Curious Control is what I'm good at. I'm going to say that it does have the ability to win the game on turn 2, right? Or it can win on turn 1 with the right cards. It's the nature of Thassa's Oracle plus Demonic Consultation. It is so fast, it's so efficient, and there's no way to justify playing a high-color control deck without those 2 cards in it. Right? So, I can't sell a control deck to you and just not include the most efficient win con in the format. And so there's always going to be that option to just win early. And that's what makes control, I guess, so interesting. It's because you can just kind of switch. And if you draw the right cards, it can be like, well, I can just go for this win attempt on turn 3. And because this deck runs so much interaction, I might be able to force this through. But it's not positioned to do that, and it's not attempting to do that every game. It's trying to get to the point where everyone's
your deck is a combo control deck, then, right?
Yeah, it's combo control.
You are a control deck. You're like Splinter Twin's the key example, right? Because it's what control deck's ever interested in Deceiver Exarch or the card Splinter Twin. So a combo control is a very real archetype. It's a thing that we've seen exist. I mean, Scapeshift, another great example in the modern format coming from my area, and I think that is a great description for what's going on in Curious Control. You are a deck that can take a control role very easily and is often looking to in pods that are a lot more proactive. But you also, in whatever, if you're playing against a bunch of dedicated stacks, it's kind of hard to control all that, I think, and you probably want to go burr a little bit more often. Having that control element does make your deck a lot more powerful.
Yeah, it's actually funny because if we're talking about the matchup versus stacks, it's one of the reasons why Niv Mizzet is included in the Niv Mizzet Curiosity lines, because that's a really hard win con to stacks out. You need things that prevent you from drawing more than 1 card per turn. But if there's something that's keeping me from winning the game after I've assembled Niv plus Curiosity, there's an effect that says, ETBs don't happen, so I can't pull off my Thoracle line. Well, part of the Niv Mizzet Curiosity thing is you draw your entire deck, and you get to deal damage equal to the number of cards in your list. So you do just get to kill the players or the pieces that are stopping you from presenting the win from there. And I'll always point to that line as a really nice way to just beat stacks, because you don't care how stacked out the board is. You just slam Divinity plus Curiosity over multiple rotations if needed, and you just win the game.
All right, that's fair. So I believe you all both suggested Najila, and I think Najila recently got a resurgence with the current list that got brewed like a few months ago. Maybe I believe, I don't know how long ago it is, but
Is that the no bad card Najila list?
I
That's
believe
pretty
it
interesting.
is. Yes, I believe it is. But like I don't think Najila before recently was in that space. Like I think a lot of people forgot about Najila. I think Najila fell off because it wasn't. I don't know the reason. Like it was a very strong deck when Flash was around because it was Najila, and then you can pretty much how it got built now. And you get to just pivot because the deck can just pivot very well to whatever you want to do. And in your command zone, you have the live total pressure. So I think saying that Najila is like now the top tier to me is very interesting. I would never agree that Rock Silence is the best deck. That's on personal bias opinion.
Well,
That's just personal, so I'm just not saying that. That will never happen. But what I've been said about, I don't know, is Team Nastarcios. I honestly think Team Nastarcios, for all the people out there, is not a viable strategy anymore. I have tried,
You
and
have.
the days of TNT are over.
it's sad.
I very
It's
much
sad.
agree.
I don't
Yeah.
know what happened.
The red cards are messed up.
The red
They're
cards
messed
Cards
up.
are really good. They're really strong.
I believe that's what it boils down to. Siga was talking to like the diehard people, except like Sick Robot, but like Scotty's still playing Razakets, and I'm like, it's either Razaket, Hermit Druid, or Hulk, and even those are still just mediocre at best. Like it's just it's not. So like saying it, like even saying that Tim Nasracios in your eyes, Greg, doesn't even fit the mid-range game plan anymore hurts my soul because I thought that was his only home that was left, and you have not entered into your home. And
Well, so I think things have been getting so creatures have been getting so efficient that Timna is rarely like connecting unless you're playing in pods where it's like you're up against a lot of turbo decks, right? And the turbo decks, the only creatures they're trying to jam are like maybe DRC and Dockside, right? And they're just trying to just do insane things. Timna in that situation is kind of weird because it only draws you cards on your turn, and I think the best use for Timna is like getting the connection, drawing 3 cards if you're lucky, and then comboing right there and then off of that basically Ancestral Recall. But it just takes so long to set up. Like if you are getting to the point where you are swinging with Timna and drawing 3 cards a turn off of it, like you've already hit that point where the Nas decks have fallen off and mid-range is starting to take over.
right.
And just having that engine take so long to set up and get going is it's one of the downfalls of the deck. And it also just misses out on Dockside, and you miss out on some of the most powerful red cards.
Yeah, you do, which is sad. You really do. But
Yeah.
so my I think I asked it is, why would you want to play Control in a multiplayer game? You're technically is a 3v1, right? Because are you the person that's selling that you need to be greedy if you play Control? You need to lean on your opponents. Like why should I pick up a Control combo deck?
Because of the challenge. I think Control. I personally play Control because it's just so difficult, and it's always mentally taxing to play Control. You have to think about so much, and there are so many decisions to make, and it comes from trying to improve yourself as a player. I think Control is the best way to do it because you have to learn not just how your own deck plays, but how every other deck plays, and it's interesting. If I'm playing like a Roger Silas list and I'm looking at my opening hand, it's like this has 1 piece of protection and a turn 2 Nas, right? I don't really have to think about what my opponents are doing or what they could have in hand. I'm just like, this is, turn 2 Nas with protection. This is winning me the game right here, and then I just have to figure out my own storm line. But in Control, I got to think about like, okay, there are 2 decks at the table that can present the turn 2 Nas. How do I stop those decks while also getting myself enough advantage to beat the 3rd deck that's, also doing a mid-range or grindy thing, and just tackling that aspect of the format, making it really difficult. That's fun.
So, Mr. Sasser, I apologize. Sorry, guys. So, Mr. Sasser, I believe Greg is saying that Nas is a brain dead strategy. Would you like?
All right. Well, maybe not calling it a brain dead strategy, but I'm saying like
did you hear the words you said? You said
the very.
I think it was a nice summary. I think it was a nice summary.
I was trying to be nice about it.
We're not going to be nice. I'm sorry, wrong person here. But yeah, what do you have to say about that? Nas is a brain dead strategy.
I want to branch off and answer your question that you asked Greg, and I think in doing so, I will address a little bit of what Greg said. cEDH, the community as a whole, from my experience coming from the 60 card space to the cEDH space, there's no shortage of this effect going on in 60 card, but with cEDH, it's even worse because of the pressure on content creators. But basically, every single cEDH player is close to obsessed with being the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. And so I think the only real appeal at the moment in the current space of cEDH to play control is if you want to try to be the smartest person in the room. And usually you're going to dramatically fail at that, but the times that it succeeds, it is going to feel really good. And people try that a lot with control decks and 60 card spaces. That's not unique to cEDH. A lot of times a week one format will come around, a week one standard format, and people are trying to brew control decks. What? What are you controlling? You don't even know what the metagame is. The whole point of a control deck is to invalidate efficient cards, invalidate removal spells that people are playing, and build your deck such that you sidestep a lot of the common interactions and get to just go over the top of your opponent in some way or another. And if you don't even know what people are playing, how can you build a control deck? You just want to play the fun draw cards effects in your decks. Okay, that's fine, but we're wasting time here. Like, when you're looking at a wide open metagame, when you're looking at a new metagame, the best thing to be doing most of the time, there's a saying in 60 cards where if it's a new format, just play mono red. Just put the aggressive creatures in your deck and beat people up. Your deck won't be the best deck in the format 6 weeks later, but week one, you're going to beat the crap out of these badly built decks. And a lot of that carries over to cEDH right now because we do not have a targetable metagame. The stuff that people play in tournaments is just varies from high power, not even cEDH, to playable decks, and then usually you have one or two actually like well-built decks. But for the most part, cEDH players, brewers, are not great deck builders because it's really hard. And so as a result, it takes a lot more time to figure this stuff out. The metagames are so different. Playing control is a huge mistake. And what you should be doing is just trying to beat the crap out of your opponents because that's what is going to work. Now, if you play with the same 4 people all the time, sure, you can design a control deck. Even if you play with the same 12 people all the time, you're going to be able to design a control deck that beats the decks that those people play. But if you show up tournament after tournament after tournament in what we have right now for cEDH, the next like 5 tournaments, let's say, with a control deck, you're going to get the crap beat out of you. Because
100% agree.
Your deck's just not good right now. Like you're not controlling anything. There's no metagame to target.
Yeah.
I would like to say, before we continue, I would like to put a disclaimer out there for the people that might be hurt by these opinions. These are just our opinions, people. Please. We have the right to have our opinions, and this is ours. All right, continue.
Yeah. All right, so I just wanted to say really quick, I 100% agree with you. I think if you take a control list, specifically a control list that you didn't build, right? You go to the decklist database, you just yoink a list off, you walk up to a tournament and you play that list, you're going to lose. You're not going to win any games. Control decks are only really that fantastic in well-defined metas. Like if you have a commander league locally, like if you're playing at a shop with 60 people, right, and you're all competing over the course of a month for a prize, or like, and a good example is the playing with power patron leagues, right? If I'm playing control in that situation and I've played with those people for months or years at this point, right, it's like I know what they're doing. I know how to adjust my deck to beat that, and I can beat that. But when I just show up to an event and it's like, all right, play against a bunch of people that I've never met before, and there's $1,000 on the line, it's like control deck isn't going to perform at all because it's something that you have to cultivate over time with a tight meta. And if you're going to be playing those control decks, or you're going to be playing control decks in tournaments, I would recommend just adding win cons to your deck because you want to be able to control for a little bit, but then also just be able to win the game. So it turns from pure control to more reactive and mid-range. And like full disclosure for Punt City, I added evolution effects to my deck to cheat out Thassa's Oracle to attempt more wins. I added Isochron Scepter to my list, Muddle the Mixture to find my combo pieces. And those are not cards that I'd normally run in my regular meta, because like I just don't need them. Like I'd rather just have more card draw. But going into a blind environment, I wanted to be able to attempt wins whenever I got the opportunity to.
So earlier in this episode, we stated our top 4 list. So I'm not going to say it's not a meta, but could you not build a deck to target those decks that you considered the best decks / the decks that people will bring if they're planning to win a tournament?
I mean, I don't think there's a well-defined win con in the format. If Flash Hulk was still legal and I could run cards specifically to beat Flash Hulk, I'd be on those cards.
Well,
but
okay, go ahead.
So it's like I said, Winota and Najeela are some of the better decks in the format in general.
And Blue
right?
Farm.
Well, it's like, and Blue Farm. Yep, I can run cards to beat those decks. To beat Blue
Okay.
Farm, you have to stop. You have to basically beat their card advantage, right? To beat Najeela, all you have to do is kill Najeela twice. And then by the time they recast Najeela, you just, continue to remove Najeela. That doesn't apply to the no bad cards Najeela, the ones that are basically just Underworld Breach with Najeela as a commander. Those are built different. And then the Winota lists, like, all you need to do is prevent their commander-centric game plan, a couple times, and they just can't get back into the game, and that's when you can really take over. And my list is, like, tuned for that, but that's not the entire format. If the entire format was just Winota, Blue Farm, and Najeela, CEDH would be very different. But we see a lot of decks. I mean, Teferi won an event recently. Urza top 4'd an event. There's been a lot of crazy things happening in the format. And so it's hard to just point at like a handful of cards or point at one strategy and be like, this beats exactly like all of this, because there's always those random rogue decks that are going to pop up and do amazing things.
Okay, all right. So for Drake, you definitely play all the 60-card formats here, and I would say pretty professional players at these events. Isn't there rogue decks also in these events?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, this is like a perfect analogy, what we've just been through here, to the modern format. The modern format across the last, probably 5-6 years has been parroted around for being very diverse. A lot of people quote the format as being excellent because it's always diverse. And I think it's ebbed and flowed with the gameplay being good, because there's a difference. To me, diversity does not equal a good format. And that applies to CEDH as well. If like every deck was a diverse stacks deck, I'd be having a miserable time. I enjoy the gameplay in CEDH that we have now. I think the format, I think we're in a golden age of CEDH, frankly. I think CEDH right now, because Thassa's Oracle is so efficient, is incredibly fun. Games are very interactive. We're seeing gameplay last for turns upon turns upon turns. It's not every game ending on turn 2. No matter, even if you have, 4 Rog size that are all trying to burr, the game does not usually end on turn 2, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Now, Modern has a much more defined metagame than CEDH by just orders of magnitude. You can go on MTG Goldfish right now and look at the top 3 decks and like, oh yeah, 4 colors great. Murktide's also great, and whatever. Just look at the metagame shares that Goldfish puts out. But I just commentated literally yesterday a modern tournament where 4 color going into the weekend, it's like face up, 4 color's been the best deck in the format for a long time. People have been screaming for bans, and there's a single copy of 4 color in the top 8, and there's a whole bunch of new rogue decks. Azorius Affinity supporting a bunch of the 8 cast effects reminiscent of the Legacy deck. You have a Merfolk supporting the new Lords. That wasn't in top 8, but showed up multiple times in the higher rungs. There's multiple of this Rakdos Scam mid-range deck that, guess what? There's a targetable metagame. Mid-range and control starts to look very reasonable, and Big Mana's seen a resurgence. So all of this is a metagame churn. It happens once you have a targetable metagame. CEDH is still very wide open. It has, everybody's basically playing a rogue deck. So we aren't even at that point yet. But the point is, even people that have tried to target modern metagames in bigger tournaments, we're talking like the GP level, you still play against Mill Guy round 1. You still play against the person that's been playing Elves since the inception of the format. People will play what they have. That's always going to be true. And it's even more true in CEDH, where people like Greg identify with a specific archetype. That guy, he might be supposed to be playing Winota because, like he admitted, you want more win conditions in your control deck. So why not play the aggro control deck? You have a very aggressive game plan that allows you to control and win the game quick. Greg's going to play CuriousControl and try to adapt that deck because he identifies with that deck. And that's totally fair. People do that in Modern. People do that in Legacy. Any Eternal format, that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, you need to be ready for that, And usually being more proactive allows you to be ready for other people doing that. And that's why I tend to eschew control decks, even in 60 card formats. I would rather play a tempo strategy that can at least get a little more aggressive than a pure control strategy anytime. And that's going to port over to CEDH as well. Like, I would probably never, I wouldn't even think I'd pick up Winota ever. I'm just not, I don't want to ever be in the spot where I need to take a control role as my archetype. I can do so with Najeela. A lot of times I can put Ranger Captain Navios in play and I can take a control role immediately. I can just be like, okay, would you like to try to attempt to win into the face of my onboard Ranger Captain? No? Okay, would you? Okay, would you? And somebody has to, otherwise I get to untap with the Ranger Captain, and then I just get to win on the spot. So immediately you get to dictate the pace of the game. You get to dictate what happens over this next turn cycle. And that, to me, is more than enough of a pivot in a deck like Najeela to be able to take a control role. I don't need to be a dedicated archetype to it, because I think you're just going to be dead in the water in a lot of different rogue deck composition pods.
So really quick, Drake, you are an amazing player, an amazing pilot. You're probably one of the best minds in CEDH right now. I, at a genuine level, I hate the comparison of Winota to Control, because I think they just play very differently. I mean, so Control is not, aggressively slamming out these effects like what Winota's trying to do. Winota is, it's mulliganing to, in my very narrow opinion of it, I've never played the deck. I played against it a lot, but in all of my experiences against the deck, Winota is just jamming its commander, and it's jamming its triggers, and it's jamming as much as it can. And actually, most games it wins off of like combat. And it's just these big effects, like it just hits a Blade of Story Now, it hits like an Angrass Marauders, I think, is the damage doubler, where it's just it overwhelms people, and it puts people in weird positions where they have to act now, because they're dying to Winota the next turn, or Winota's just going to go ridiculous by getting 7 triggers, then throw out all of these nasty effects. But I think that's a very different approach than what Control is trying to do, because Control doesn't do that. Like, I don't think there are a lot of, at least blue-based control decks. And I'll say this right now, I don't think you can be playing Control without blue in your deck. If you're playing the Control strategy without blue, it's just stacks. Like, you're just playing stacks. Control, in my mind, is interacting.
I glue stacks and Control together a lot. I think that's a good point that you're making. And I'm willing to discuss the separation of those archetypes, because they do, in my opinion, they do the same thing, but they go about it different ways, which I think is what you just said too.
Yeah.
Right? You just said, all right, like Winota's putting pressure on the table by putting this Winota in play, and is a lot more aggressive, right? Like Ashani even called it an aggro deck. Mm-hmm. But where I draw my parallels is, for me, mulliganing to a stacks piece versus mulliganing for a counter spell in a pod with fast decks is very similar to me. You're mulliganing for an answer. Now, it takes a different texture, but you are mulliganing for an answer. And also, mulliganing to the ability to have a turn 2 kill, like CuriousControl does, compared to mulliganing to a turn 1 Winota, is also very similar to me. You are trying to do your primary win condition game plan much faster. And putting a Winota in play, putting pressure on the table to like either win or answer the whole thing that turn, is the same as putting a Niv Mizzet in play. Either, if you untap that, you should win. So the pressure's on the table to either answer it, either right then, because you might even just win right then, or on the next turn cycle, or the game's just over. All of these are very similar textures of the game to me, even if they involve very different card compositions.
Okay.
That's fair. I just think they attack the format in different angles, because I've seen, I think it was Mike's Winota list, like, doesn't run basically any instant speed interaction. I think it's on Abrade, and that's about it. I'm not even sure if he's still on Abrade, but I know he's not on the blasts. I know he's not on a lot of more efficient interaction, because he just wants to jam the Winota thing. And in my mind, Control wants to interact on the stack, because it wants that ability to, manipulate other players and what cards they have in hand. But maybe that's just my bias showing through.
I don't think so. I mean, they do operate differently fundamentally, and I do think you're right about that.
Yeah, but like Winota, in my mind, and I think the proper classification for it is just, it's aggro. It's aggro stacks. It's proactive. It's similarly proactive to a Nas deck, where instead of, ramping out into a Nas, you're just ramping out into Winota and its triggers. And
For sure.
unchecked,
Like, I think it's an aggro control deck versus a combo control deck, and that's
Yeah.
we're highlighting the differences between those two.
Mhm.
My entire summary there is that if I wanted to be able to do the control role, like if I wanted control tag on my deck, like thinking that I'm playing a control archetype, I would lean towards Winota over CuriousControl, even though they're both control decks. They're both partially control decks.
Yeah.
I think Winota does take an aggro role a lot of the time, and sometimes CuriousControl takes a combo role. But the point is, both decks have that ability to be either a control deck, or a more proactive strategy.
That's fair. Yeah, I can appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Because CEDH doesn't have the data, I think, but to say we have a targeted metagame, but I think we do. Like, if for the, I'm going to still say it and still get roasted for it, for the limited of data that we have, we see what it is Blue Farm, because Blue Farm is there. It's Blue Farm for whoever still playing Timber's Ratios or any Grixis X deck. That is what it is. The win conditions is Saz's Oracle, Tainted Pack Consult, Underworld Breach, and Intuition. No matter what deck you're playing, this is the core game plan that you try to do. We can build, I believe we can build a deck that can attack that meta. I think Urza did the one that made the top 4. It played effects like Grafdigger's Cage. It played effects like Back to Basic. It's not great. It's just like Blood Moon effects aren't great because there's a red pirate, whatever he is, that makes these cards not playable. But if you still jam those effects and they don't have the dark side in hand, you get to run away with that game. So I believe you can still target it. I disagree with that part that yes, it's wide open and people gonna bring their brew of Omnas or whatever it is and play the deck they enjoy. Might not be the best deck, but they're still gonna play these win these cards to win the game. And I believe you can attack
when is the
it.
last time a Thassa's Oracle deck won a tournament?
Ooh,
Teferi's
that's
not
fun.
one. Winota's not one. Croc Sakashima's not one.
Okay,
Magda doesn't
sure.
win with it.
But when let's have an Underworld Breach one, well,
I mean, a bunch of those decks play Breach.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
So that's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
know. Winota doesn't.
Well,
Urza
Yeah,
doesn't.
Winota doesn't.
listen,
Fairy doesn't.
gosh darn it.
I mean, it's fine to be like, look, we can target this, but I mean, look at the decks that are winning. They're
Look,
rogue
the decks that are winning are not the decks.
The decks that
They're
are
proactive
winning.
rogue decks.
Yes, the decks that are winning are not. I agree. But the decks that are top 16 in and top 4s or these decks, can we agree with that?
Well, the joke here is I actually agree with you.
Okay.
I think that Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pack, and Consult and Breach are all the best things to be doing in the format. I think you and I know that.
Yeah.
However, we are once again circling back to the modern effect.
Right.
We're circling back to the everybody wants to be the smartest person in the room. So even people that know, they know in their heart, yeah, okay, Breach, Underworld Breach, I'm sorry, Thassa's Oracle, Consult, all that stuff's the best thing to be doing. I'm going to sleeve up Malcolm plus other stuff. I'm going to sleeve up Urza. I'm going to sleeve up Winota. People want to be the person that breaks out with this new archetype and brews this thing that just beats everybody. People are so much more obsessed with doing that than just playing good cards. Because to other people in this format, playing the good cards is boring. I hear that nonstop. People are like, Drake, you're so boring when it comes to your deck building. What? Because I'm putting good cards in my deck? That makes me boring? I'm trying to win.
Yeah. Like, winning brings me joy in my heart. But no, so what I'm saying, Greg, is I believe we can target these things. So I believe if we can target it, why isn't there a deck that can beat these? Like, why is Blue Farm still running rampant? Why haven't we found a deck that says Blue Farm doesn't win? And then I can deal with the rogue decks, just like what Modern is. When I used to play Modern, like, sure, Tron is an unplayable deck in the current meta. I mean, it's not true, but it's true, though. Like, Tron has do you see all the hate pieces for Tron? Tron shouldn't even be, people slaving up the deck. But they still do. So, people have the decks that they mesh with. So, why have I not seen a deck that says it beats Blue Farm? Why haven't I found a deck that said it beats Underworld Breach? Like, what is the issue here?
So honestly, I maybe it's just the fact that I've been playing this deck for God knows how long, or too long. But I feel like my matchup versus Blue Farm is actually favored towards me most games because they're trying to do like the mid range and grind and control thing, but they also just run Naws and all of the rituals supporting it. So if the two decks are off in like top deck mode, right, or just card advantage mode, when like if the only two relevant decks at the pod, the other two decks have either fallen behind or gotten stopped, and there's Blue Farm and Curious Control, and we're both drawing cards, my draws are just better because I don't care if you're drawing rituals and stuff. If I can just counter your payoff, your Naws, right? All of your spell casts are triggering my remorse, or your rituals are triggering my Mystic Remorse and my Rhystic Studies, and it's just getting me more cards. And like, if you draw 5 cards and I draw 5 cards, there's a good chance that I'm hitting like 2 or 3 counter spells, right? And you might hit ritual, rock, like supporting thing like a Jessica's Will, which I guess is a ritual and impulsive draw, and then like your tutor, your Naws, your payoff, right? And so in the blind matchup, like I think I'm favoring that because I just have a better interaction suite.
But you're favoring it in a 1v1 strategy, but it's not a 1v1 strategy.
Okay, that was just a situation. I guess what I'm saying is that like in multiplayer environment, right? Mm-hmm. No one wants to lose the game, so everyone wants to survive, right? Like no one's just gonna sit. Okay, normal people aren't just gonna sit there with 3 counter spells in hand and pass on an ad nauseam, right? Like they're going to interact with the ad nauseam because they want to be able to still be relevant in the game. They want to be able to win or attempt to win, right? And I'm calling out everyone who sandbags.
Felt like I'm being targeted here.
Yeah,
I don't sandbag. You know I'm a cast your spells kind of man.
No, but like if you've got like 4 counter spells in hand for some reason, right, and you're passing on a Naws because you're just trying to priority bully someone else who like you don't know perfect information what they have, that's just irresponsible play. But I guess what I'm saying is that if there are 4 people just drawing cards at a consistent rate, right, what Blue Farm is drawing is rituals and tutors for the Naws, and Naws is their payoff spell, right? And all I'm drawing is interaction and tutors and more draw. And are you, the Blue Farm player, going to burn your counter spells to prevent my draw effects when you're still digging for, you know, your Naws or whatever, right? Because if you're burning your interaction to prevent my draw, if we're still drawing cards at a similar rate and you're not letting me get ahead, my draws are still better going on until the late game. Because all I have to do is counter your Naws. I have to counter the payoff spell, right? And there's the only thing that you really need to counter out of my deck is the win attempt. Like I don't have the Naws that just wins me the game. It's like Niv Mizzet wins me more games than anything else. I've actually won more games off of the back of Niv Mizzet than Thassa's Oracle Consult since I started.
That's a payoff though, right?
It is the massive payoff, but it has that benefit of just being this spell cannot be countered, which is kind of cheating, but I like it.
Sure, I mean people don't play enough removal. That's a separate story. I think okay. So if I'm
understand that it's like if we're both drawing cards, right? Like you're drawing, Blue Farm is drawing more rituals. It's not drawing the interaction that decks that are more tuned to grind are drawing. And so when it comes to just that situation, just who has interaction in hand or who can stop who, right? Like Blue Farm, their draws aren't as relevant in just the heads up drawing match. Like if we're just flipping cards and seeing who can stop the other person, you know, Blue Farm isn't winning those games.
Well, right. Like I said, I actually think if I make the following assumptions, because to interact with this, I mean, CEDH has so many variables. We need to make some assumptions.
Yeah.
The assumptions I'm willing to make are that Curious Control, as you have built it, is a good control deck, and or at least executes a control strategy and a control role well. The second assumption is that every player at the table is remotely like good, like as a competent Magic player.
Yeah, they're all decent.
If you sit down in a pod with 3 other Blue Farm players, I would expect as games go to infinity, you to come out ahead. I expect that you have less, air, and when every player is interacting, your cards, you have more just generic draw that people are not going to want to spew their stuff on. I would expect if you sit down a pod with 3 Rog size, as games go to infinity, they're interactive, they're going to be longer, it should favor you. However, if you sit down with a pod with 3 Winotas, I don't think you buy 50%. I don't even think you buy 25%. I think you're going to get the crap beat out of you.
Oh, I get my shit kicked.
Because you have decks that can do the control thing and can also just get way more aggressive, and you do not have removal spells for that. You're sitting on a bunch of counter spells, and sure, you counter this person's Winota, the next person's Winota resolves, you get the crap beat out of you.
Have you actually looked at my
the
list
more
recently,
non-blue decks there are, I think you're just dead.
I don't. Go ahead.
I've actually been transitioning to more single-targeted creature removal, and I've been playing a lot more of that. I got on Drown in the Lock recently, which is something that I'm testing out again, because I want to be able to win in those win notice situations where if there's 2 win noted decks at the table, I want to be able to still be relevant there.
Well, that's a problem, right? Because now you're weakening your matchup against the stack interaction stuff, right? Like this is the control problem. Is that you need to be able to answer everything.
It's so difficult.
Right. I would argue usually not very possible. That's why the wide metagame thing's a problem.
Yeah.
Because you can't beat everything. You can't beat every angle of attack. Why can't you beat Blue
agree.
Farm?
I agree.
Because guess what? The things that beat Underworld Breach are not the same things that beat Thassa's Oracle.
Right.
They're not. Like Force of Will works. Sure, you get one of those. you know? Force of Negation doesn't even hit both of those things. So how do you build a control deck to beat even just the known quantity, much less the person that shows up with Malcolm, much less the person that shows up with Rocco, much less the person that shows up with Magda? You can't. You can't do that. Not with any level of consistency. In
Malcolm and Magda both died of Flame Sweep, and I'll always preach for that card. So.
I mean, I'm here for sweepers. I push for Fire Covenant every opportunity I mean, that's messed up.
Just a brief moment on that, but so Control makes traditionally makes 1-for-1 trades with a single opponent until it gets to the point where it can make a 2-for-1 trade, or it can make its progression towards winning the game and still be able to make a 1-for-1 trade in the same turn. So you slowly gain advantage to the point where you can just snowball and win. Well, in Commander, if you're making 1-for-1 trades with a single opponent and expecting to win that game, you're unrealistic. There's no way you're going to win if you're just 1-for-1 trading the entire time, because you have two.
Everybody gets a draw step, 3 draw steps to your 1. Every card has to be a 3-for-1 minimum.
Ridiculous hot take, but I will sometimes compare Flame Sweep to Time Walk in CuriousControl, because it is absolutely hilarious to watch people turn 1 develop Dork, turn 2 develop their Tymna, and then it's like Flame Sweep, kill it all. And I spent my turns playing lands, drawing cards, having a great time, right? And everyone else was just developing creatures, and even if I lose like a Deathrite Shaman off of that Flame Sweep, it is more backbreaking for everyone else than it was for me. And having those effects that can just get everyone, and that was like a 3-for-1 trade. Right, like those are really good situations to be in.
I mean, I don't even believe that Greg wins the three blue farm pod either. I don't know, bro. I've
played those pods before, and I can remember 3 specific games where it wasn't 3 blue farms, it was 2 blue farms, a Grixis Malcolm, and then CuriousControl, and I win my fair share of those games.
Yeah, fair share.
I would expect like 35% or whatever.
Yeah.
I expect
it's not like an 85% win rate, because that's like cheating levels of win rates.
That's just not reasonable.
But
across. As games go to infinity, if you're at 85%, you're just cheating, or you broke the format in half.
Yeah,
one of those two things has happened.
We have to remember that 25% win rates are like good. Like if you can maintain a 25% win rate in CEDH, like that's a good spot to be in, and only like really talented players or people with like fucked up decks are going to be winning. Or I don't know if I'm supposed to swear, I'm sorry, but with very powerful decks are supposed to be like those decks. If they're getting like a 35 or a 45% win rate across 100 games, it's like they're doing something amazing, or they're playing against horrible people. There's no excuse that any deck across 75 or 100 games should be getting like a 45% win rate, because that is ridiculous. That stat just doesn't make any sense if you're playing into a
single tournament. Totally fine. You can run hot. Everybody does. Think about the record you have to win a tournament. 15 round open, and then the top 8 to win a tournament. I mean, you have to win 15 out of 18 of your matches, with what should be normally a 50% win rate. If you do the math on that, it's bad. It's bad math. So winning a tournament is very hard in 1v1. Yeah. In 4-player, it's such a way that there shouldn't be somebody that's just winning every single thing consistently unless they have broke it in some way. Either they're cheating, they're insane at Magic, or they have a broken deck, or some combination of all of it.
Yeah. I really think if you're looking at anyone who has I think a good threshold to say is 50 games, right? 50 games, and if anyone is claiming to have anywhere close to a 45 to a 50% win rate across at least 50 games, you have to look at it and be like, what are you actually playing against? Are you playing against the same meta of people who refuse to improve their lists, or are you just playing against bad people? We got off on a tangent here, but there's just
I wanted to continue the tangent. I have a whole bit about over testing and how
go ahead.
Opens, I usually played 5. I played 5 matches before most tournaments, and that is the extent of my testing. People were whatever, you have to play so many games to master a deck. I had a conversation on Twitter recently that it's Should this player that's experienced with CuriousControl or whatever pick up Blue Farm if they think it's a better deck? Absolutely. Even if you have a week, I don't care.
Yeah.
Play 10 pods. You'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Like, if you are a good Magic player, your skills will port. There's no reason to shoehorn yourself. There's no reason to get too attached to a deck like people do in cEDH all the time. I watched Ashani, an expert Corvold player, just struggle against pods of players way worse than him. Switch to Blue Farm, immediately beat the crap out of these pods. Absolutely. I mean, his skills on display, just the difference there isn't that Ashani is a better player with this deck. It's literally the deck's better. Like, Ashani's an incredible player and is going to win a bunch of games on Corvold that, other players are not even going to get in the zip code of winning. But you put a good deck in his hands and suddenly, this guy's a force to be reckoned with. He's going to beat the crap out of a bunch of pods. And it's a striking difference. Nothing makes me more excited than when good players show up to cEDH pods without blue cards in their deck. It's like, yes! That is one person I do not have to worry about when it comes to combos.
Yeah, I thought he was joking, but it was terrifying. We were playing a in-tournament league in our Discord, and I rolled the table with Corvold, and me and Jake was in the pod, and it was like he kept rolling me on wheels, and I'm like, can you just stop wheeling me into garbage? And I got tired of just losing to him, so I brought Blue Farm. And it was completely different. I'm like, okay, he might be right, but at the same time.
So I actually have a proxied up Najila list and a proxied up Kenrith Evolution list on my desk, and I play those lists only when I'm on a 15 or 16 game losing streak with CuriousControl, because you'll go on huge losing streaks, right? And it's like, I just need to think about something else now, and so I'll bring out Najila, and it's like, it's a fine deck. It's a good deck. It wins a lot of games because of how proactive it is. It's just not what I prefer to be doing, because I'm stubborn in my ways. I like to counter spells, and so even when I'm playing Kenrith Evolution, I have this is a turn 3 win attempt, right? Like, what if I just develop Kenrith? What if I just counter your stuff? What if I just develop my Ristic Studies? Like, I've spent way too much time actively tutoring for a Ristic Study over a Dockside, and it's not healthy.
I think that's incredibly intelligent. I do that all the time. Esper Sentinel. I've Enlightened tutored for Esper Sentinel more in the last month or two than the previous 3 years. Realizing that the actual card advantage cards that matter are Remora, Ristic, and Esper Sentinel, and everything else is dog shit is a big level up moment, because it makes Ranger Captain way better. You realize that card's cracked in half is because it just tutors a draw engine. Not only is it a piece of interaction, but it tutors one of the best 3 cards for drawing cards in your deck. And
shout out to my friend Zach here, but every game I play with him where I get a turn 1 or turn 2 Imperial Seal, he tells the entire table hey, he's getting a Ristic Study or he's getting a Training Grounds, and there's no other option. And it's we've been playing hundreds of games together, it at this point, but
Ristic Study's messed up. It's so messed up.
It's a really good card.
Well, this was fun. I believe. Is there anything else we need? I think we covered everything that I came out to talk.
I'm down to just chat. We can just talk about.
Well,
what's your favorite counterspell, Drake?
Well,
my favorite counterspell? Silence.
Silence. Oh my god, you're one of those people. I'm a big Mindbreak Trap guy. I like that.
Mindbreak Trap. That card is incredibly good at beating the crap out of me.
Yeah.
It took about 4 pods of Kai killing me on turn 1 or 2 by just casting Mindbreak Trap before I was like, you know what? Mindbreak Trap might just be messed up.
No, it's a really good card.
That card is really good.
My favorite opening hands are the ones that are turn 1 Mystic Remora with a Mindbreak Trap in hand, because it's I can't interact here when you're storming off and you're doing your Nas thing. You go land, ritual, Nas, and it's thanks. I'm back to a full grip, and I still have the counterspell for you.
Yep.
It is
so it gets around Veil. It's just so.
It's so. How many times have I gotten Connor with a Mindbreak Trap when he's comboing off with Dargo under the protection of a Veil, and it's I just wait for him to crack a Lion's Eye Diamond and empty his hand, and it's just all right, there you go. You don't have a Pyroblast anymore.
I'm a terrible magnet for Mindbreak Trap. I'm just stop playing around it. I get Mindbreak Trap.
It's funny watching people play it too, because
I'll just play into it. I mean, if you have it, you have it.
Same. I mean, whatever. If you have it, you have it. Kill me.
Okay.
I don't know what you got.
Not here to play around it.
Not referencing that. Referencing watching people learn that it was a broken card. Because I remember a long time ago, Gustav and I and a couple other people were in a voice chat, and we were just Mindbreak Trap's a kind of messed up card, and it just took some time, and then it was I ordered a foil, and started playing it, and I remember getting people just game after game after game, and then it wasn't for a couple months after that when I got Mindbreak Trap for the first time, and I was like, holy shit, someone else is playing a card that's actually like decent. It's
no matter how many times I learned the lesson in 60 card formats that free spells are broken, apparently I just need to keep relearning it in CEDH.
Yeah, I mean, free spells are always broken. I'm recently on Misdirection too, because I think that card is fairly.
It's underplayed.
I will never play Days though. That card can die in the dish somewhere.
Not a Days fan.
Oh,
that particular Magic card has won me an immense. Okay, I changed my answer. Days is my favorite counter spell in not CEDH. And in other formats, Days is
I got by Days in CEDH just a couple days ago, and I'm very upset about it.
Oh yeah, I get upset about it all the time. It's creeping up in it, and because I'm playing in a lot of Rock Silas pod, they're like, "Do you have any mana open?" I'm like, "Can you just play the card? I'm not here.
Yeah.
Just Days me. Just Days.
I'm not here to be slow rolled. Just do what you gotta do.
I love Days so much. I've done an entire podcast about Days with one of my friends many moons ago.
Oh, dude, I would love to just sit down and talk about Days.
No, no, absolutely not. We will not.
Oh yeah, just Days of Shani. That's great. All right, we're off the rails.
I have just learning to slowly put Brainstorm back in my deck because people keep saying Brainstorm. I'm like, bro, I've been cutting Brainstorm for the last 2 months. Haven't missed it.
Brainstorm is really good.
Yeah, I know.
Messed up. Ancestral Recall, Ashani. The card says Ancestral Recall on it.
I hear you. I hear the words you're saying, but they're words to me. They're words.
Nothing is more satisfying than brainstorming in response to a wheel and putting your 2 favorite cards back on top as well. It's it's a really strong card. It does a lot of fun things.
Cracks your top of the deck tutors.
Yeah,
all tutors and shuffle effects. It's always ancestral.
See?
Always
the words that you're saying.
And when you compare it in a control strategy too, like when I'm on Rashmi and the 99, it's so much fun to force of will on the stack, response to Rashmi trigger, do my brainstorm, and then tuck like a Ristic Study or some fun thing onto the top and cheat it into play.
See, the problem with that is first I have to play Rashmi, and that's not happening. So
yeah, well, I think Rashmi.
You don't play Rashmi? You don't play Rashmi in your deck? That's real weird. It's real weird. Wow. Your 4-mana Pyroblast Rod seems like it'd be pretty good.
No, I'm good.
We have different approaches to the format.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. Closest thing that is guess is Brainstorm and Niv Mizzet. That's all I'm giving you. Nothing else. So.
Oh, that's so much fun.
That is fun.
At least the 6-mana Pyroblast Rod draws a card
exactly.
when it gets Pyroblasted.
Thank you. I'm like, dude.
That was actually the original reasoning behind Niv Mizzet too, was like, this is just like a Rashmi style effect that like at least gives me something when someone just immediately swords it. So,
6.
And then I realized that like you just draw a ton of cards.
6 mana, draw 1. That seems bad, bro.
And deal a damage.
Deal a damage.
Come on, You're leaving damage on the table.
Can't leave a damage on the table. My apologies.
The damage is sweet though. The damage is what makes it. The damage is what makes
Spirit of the Labyrinth or whatever.
Ew. Oh. Okay.
Spirit has 4 toughness, right? Though, so you really need to.
The Labyrinth is a 3/1.
Is it a 3/1?
I think you're thinking of Eidolon of Roderick.
Eidolon of Roderick. If it's a white stacks creature, I have no idea what it does.
Ooh.
So.
Same.
My goodness.
I just died to it. I pick up my cards. We're good.
So we're in the playing with power. You should be ashamed of yourself. You play against Charles.
Yeah, I play with power, not little white creatures. What do you mean?
S%.
Okay, that's not a little white creature. That's a Mystic Remora, but in a creature's shell.
My goodness,
that's a messed up card.
All right, I believe we can. Any other last remarks before we close up? I know we have a Bills game, or at least Jake has a Bills game he wished to watch.
Yeah, I got money on the Bills game. Yeah, I don't even want to look at the score. I just finished this half liter.
Yeah,
of beer.
I saw. Like you need a refill.
I'm good to go.
You need a refill. Go watch the game.
How much money is riding?
I'm gonna go downstairs. The Bills are losing. I'm gonna be so mad. I'm leaving you these closing thoughts. Ashani, please just stop taking blue cards out of your deck. You're so good at Magic. Please don't hamstring yourself. Greg, please. You were so good at CEDH. If you just
stop playing,
stop playing
bad cards, bro.
I get you love the deck, and trust me, I have this Essica deck. I pick up and play it whenever I want to do some sweet stuff too, because Jessica Sensei makes me happy, and it is so cool. And I could probably, get that deck to be overinflated in metagame share if I just talked about it all the time. But the deck's not that good, so I play it as my guilty pleasure. It's so fun, and I love it. But when it comes to tournament time, I beg you, Greg. I beg you.
No, I mean,
Please.
I'll roll
No.
to a tournament with CuriousControl. Like, I'm gonna do it. That's my
You're
thing.
killing me. You're killing
That's
me.
fine. I don't like. I'm not a tournament grinder. I'm not trying to make money
That's
off
fair.
these events.
That's
I'm
fair.
going.
Everybody wants
I'm
different
going to
things
have
out of
fun.
Magic.
I'm going to be social with people. Like, I'm not going to hand people free wins to the tournament. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying as hard as I can to stop people.
All right, then
but,
let's
can't stop
So
everyone.
let's change the thing. What about I need you to be the pinnacle of control for all the control mid-range players out there that wants to not love themselves and just sit there and suffer and while
Yeah.
controlling the table. I need you to be that guy. And I need it not to be Curious Control. Could you do that? Like build
You
a
need it to
deck.
be any other deck.
Build a deck.
Any other mid-range and control
Yes,
deck.
build a deck and
Not
says,
Curious Control.
Sean, I also don't I enjoy not loving myself, and here's a deck that we can share. And at this moment, it's not there. It's not.
All right. So can I share? I have this idea that's been sitting at the back of my mind for a couple months now,
Okay.
and it's Curious Control. Hear me out. It's Curious Control, but we get off the silly card package and we get on Breach, right? But, and hear me out. But this is where it gets fun because I only play fun versions of Curious Control. We run Life from the Loam, Dredge effects, and we interact mainly off of Otawara and Beseiju and constantly buying it back and saving the actual counter spells in our hand. So it's going to play like a 4-color Tassiger that's just constantly Life from the Loaming back, Cephalid Coliseum, Beseiju, and Otawara, and then just using that as interaction because it's very hard to stop that.
So
right, if I haven't,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Let me ask you something, Greg. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. When is the last time that the winner of a game has been meaningfully changed based on the channel ability or the threshold ability of one of the lands you just mentioned?
So actually, funny you mentioned this. I have been kind of playing with Cephalid Coliseum on and off for a while now, and that card stops a lot of Thoracle wins because people just forget about it. Or
So bad players?
Just so yeah, bad players.
Cool.
My experience has been very different. I played Cephalid Coliseum for a long time, and it never got a single person that I was playing with. And in Najila, I thought Beseiju was great. It's always 1 mana. You always have Najila.
It's 1 mana.
And I had it as an interaction piece multiple times as I died anyway. So I don't know. I'm looking to see if your experience has been dramatically different from mine, where I've had these cards available to me. They work, even under silences. They work.
I'm
they don't
really low on Otawara right now.
things.
Even though it is the channel land that taps for blue, I don't like it costing 4 mana at a floor. It feels like I'm just playing an island that I can't get off Assassin's Trophy. So it's just like, what's the point of running it? But Beseiju's effect is strong enough that I would consider running it in a lot of decks.
I think Beseiju's the better of the two, clearly.
Beseiju's definitely the better of the two, but Otawara taps for blue, and I think the art is nicer. So
the art is nice. That art is incredible.
So because I play Curious Control based on a meta, right? I've had a lot of people ask, like, Greg, why are you still on Ponder and stuff? And it's like, I play cards that I have a fully foiled Curious Control deck, right? And so, like, there are cards that should be out of my primer list that I'm still playing because I have a ridiculously nice foil of it.
I love that for you. So that's just EDH.
Yeah,
that's just
EDH,
like
yeah.
I'm just playing EDH at maximum power level.
All right, so
it's great. It's great.
This is what I need from you. I need you to talk to a human being called Mikey Holohan that doesn't like fat in his decks. I need you to talk to him and then cut the cute cards and then send it to me.
Okay, so if we cut the cute cards, like, okay, I've tried to have this conversation with people who don't brew dedicated control, and most of the feedback that I get when I hand my list to someone that's like, hey, help me make this a better control deck, the first suggestions are just like run Adnaz, run Pier, run all of that stuff, and it just takes away from the identity of what the deck wants to
All right, so you're just not going to agree? All right, cool. I think
so I will reach out to Mikey. I'll tweet at him or something.
No, he's going to tell you those things still, so it's just not going to work either.
Oh yeah, no. But if Mikey's response is going to be like, "Oh, cut the extra interaction or cut the less efficient interaction and just run Nas and all the rituals," it's like that is just not useful deck building critique when I'm trying to work on a control list.
Okay,
because at that point I'm just playing Thrasios File Smasher, Nas. I'm just playing a faster deck, and it's like. That some people can play that. That's just not what I want to be doing.
That is respectable. All right, closing marks, Greg.
follow me on Twitter. I am on Twitter at CuriousControl. There's currently a battle to 1,000 followers going on between me and someone else that I won't name because I don't want them to win. And currently the prizes are a 6-pack of beer and a Little Caesars pizza. So it's like
high stakes.
Yeah,
high
super
stakes.
super high
Follow
stakes
him.
right now. Yeah.
Drake, any social media push?
Well, I mean, I followed Curious Control on Twitter because I want him to win the 6-pack of beer and Little Caesars pizza.
Awesome.
If you wanted to follow me while you're on a following spree, you can find me at viral_Drake, like the magic card, on Twitter. And then just regular viral Drake, exactly like the magic card, on Moxfield. If you want to see what I'm working on, you can find all my decks there. I believe everything that I am working on presently should be public. Should be able to look at that. And if you want to yell at me, Twitter's always a great space for yelling at me. People take quite a bit of advantage of that, and I'm always here to be yelled at. So,
right.
Check out Playing with Power, too. PWP, MTG, check them out.
Cool.
Great group of people, I hear.
Yeah. I will also say the miscast because he forgot that part. And yeah. And I also...
Dead podcast.
Yeah, podcast. Yeah, miscast podcast. Good content there. I forgot the Patreon shout out. So the Patreon shout out for this episode is Kids Who Sucks. All right.
Oh my God, Kid Who Sucks.
Shout out to you, sir. I hope you have a great day. So we shall.
Even if you suck, I hope your day doesn't.
I hope your day doesn't. All right. A big thanks to our sponsors, TC Rocket. Make sure you give us a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and your favorite podcast aggregator. You'll be surprised how much it helps. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all the links will be in the episode show notes. This wraps up this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk about our favorite format and our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more CEDH content? Commander's Herald has got you covered. It's the best resource for CEDH articles out there, written by experts, including Playing with Power's own Treg Sasser. Check out the latest Phyrexia All Will Be One set reviews now. Go to commandersherald.com today to read more.